Hey yo, welcome to the Meta My Music Show, episode 6, where I interview various people from within the music industry, whether they are musicians, artists, producers, engineers, business owners, content creators, you name it, and learn the insights that they've gained on their journey of the creative process, of how they make music, of how they approach their career, and just get to know them a little bit better in general. Today, I have a good chat with my good friend Nico, and we talk about how to set up your studio so that it's a little bit more like an expressive instrument, as well as how to deal with the ups and downs of being an artist, as well as connect to your music in a deeper way. But before we get into that, I just want to mention that if you want to learn more about how to design your own creative process from the beginning to the end to really shape and refine it to make it your own, I've created a super in-depth masterclass called How to Master the 3 Secrets of the Creative Process. So if you want to check that out, you can find it in the link below. And with that said, let's get into the episode. Welcome to episode 6 of the Meta My Music Show. And I'm here with one of my best friends in the entire world, an amazing human being, my friend Nicolas Guenette, but we're going to call him Nico for the sake of people who don't speak French. How's it going, my friend?
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
It's going well. How about you?
Good. Keeping busy as always, but I'm super jacked to have a conversation with you because there's a lot of exciting things we can talk about. Yeah. So to start off, let's what are you up to these days in terms of music, creativity, art? You do a lot of stuff, but what's up right now?
Big question. Always keeping busy. Music and art, two of my big things in my life. I definitely go back and forth between both. It's kind of got its pros and cons. Always have a million projects going. Once in a while, I'll finish things, but it tends to be just a journey more than the destination thing. Creativity for me lately, at least. But starting to get my stuff organized a bit these days. I've been diving more into iOS music, so making music on my iPad. It's like I never thought I would venture into this realm, but it's definitely been a game changer. Kind of getting me excited again about kind of remaking sounds, making songs again. We can chat about that a bit more. And I'm always doing painting, always drawing and stuff. Like I said, it's kind of nice to be able to bounce creativity around. I'm slightly obsessive when it comes to keeping busy with creativity, but I don't know. It's great.
Yeah, totally. Well, like you've finished a lot of paintings and drawings and all sorts of stuff. Like you have a lot of work, and that's a really cool combination of both being a visual artist and musician and producer. Because as for me, like I doodle, but definitely not to the extent I haven't gotten into it like you have. So yeah, do you find that there's a connection between those two things?
I find it's interesting. For me, it's always been like a constant refinement or whatever. Like I'll look at a piece and there's always a little detail somewhere here or there I'll be able to pick out. So I never, even things I consider finished, it's usually more of a abandoning thing more than like a seeing it all the way through. But lately I've been kind of getting more dialed into like the detail world, and like when you do get those details down, then that's kind of where the finish line you can find it. But as far as music goes, it's always been that's something I've been challenged with, is like finishing songs and taking it further than kind of a hobby, kind of just unwinding, making a quick beat. But I'm at the point now where you start to accumulate a bunch of awesome ideas that you kind of want to take to the next stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Sweet. Yeah, there's something very interesting about finishing art. There's I think it's like art is never finished, only abandoned. And
exactly. I resonate with that a lot.
Like, because with art, there's no defined finish line. Like every piece of art could have been worked on more in theory.
Yeah.
So at some point, you have to like make the decision to let it go. And that's as much part of the finishing process as anything else. which is super interesting. And
Yeah.
it can be different for different forms of art, right? Like you said, you zoom into the details, and once you get to a certain satisfaction to your artistic eye or artistic ear with the details and you feel pretty good about it, then you can abandon it. But I have, like, everything I've ever finished has felt abandoned for sure. I
Yeah.
never felt like it was finished. um and even for finishing music, like I talked to quite a few producers and musicians and artists who are in the DAW or just record themselves or the demos or whatever, and like finishing music is a huge issue and problem that people face. And I think
Mhm.
it's almost like I was having this conversation with some other people in a call a few days ago, and we were having the conversation of, it seems that when you're creating music and you're in like the flow state, you got the vibe, you really got something going, it's almost like you're trying to learn how to bridge the gap between getting that to the finish line as quick as possible, because the nature, at least from the people I was speaking with and from my own experience,
Yes.
is like the nature of overthinking things and really letting the mind go too detailed into analyzing all these different components and possibilities and changing what was originally there,
Yeah.
changes it like it sterilizes it, and then in that
Yeah.
point you can lose a lot of what it was there. So a lot of people I've been talking to have been trying to shorten the gap, where it's like you're not like separating it too much, you're trying to connect the dots to get to the finish line,
Right.
which is
Yeah,
super.
I like that you brought that up. It's kind of been my like low key mission. I guess I make kind of hip hop is kind of my main music these days, or more like beats, I guess. But it's always been my mission to yeah, be able to like finish a song in one sitting, like literally like mastered and everything. Um, which is very doable in hip hop because it's not the most like rocket science stuff. You can, it's just like you're fishing for a vibe, you get the vibe, you get the performance. That's what it's all about. You can't really go back in and edit the vibe. The vibe is the vibe, and if you're happy, yeah, it's hard to like put into words.
No, yeah,
But,
I completely agree with that. And like I know somebody, one of my good friends, like they have a setup. It's not exactly hip hop, but it's like they have a setup where they have all of like the processing and plugins happening in real time. So he's trying to compose music that's finished as he's composing it,
oh, cool.
right? Which is really
Like
interesting.
generating notes,
Yeah, like
like
he
or
piano, and he has these like different rhythmic generators. Like I think he has like a Moog um subharmonicon or whatever that creates stuff, and he
cool.
like controls that. He has piano, but it's like all running into a UAD with all the processing so that it's sound like it's
Yeah.
going to get to the end line right when he's making it.
So this is like the latest thing I just got into. It's like I was mentioning the iOS stuff, man. It's like I never thought I would get into to modular just because it's like it's so inaccessible just from its price point. But man, you can buy like a $20-$30 app that's literally not only matches it, but it's like levels beyond just from the touch interface. You're not dealing with cables. It's like you're so yeah, I've been kind of like learning. I've been familiar with MIDI, but kind of learning the whole like you're kind of saying how you can create a brain that's ready to send signals everywhere, like having a real making your DAW more of a hub than a blank canvas. It's, I guess, I don't know.
It's almost like trying to transform your studio and your DAW into an instrument, and it's like
Yeah,
it's not like you're recording the music into it, you're using it to create the thing.
yeah, exactly. Which is definitely a paradigm shift if you're used to just like dealing with tracks, just like recording into an empty track and then whatever, like the standard multi-track way of recording as opposed to I guess the more modular approach.
It's yeah, it's almost like it's done full circle, because a useful way to look at it that I've found is like a spectrum between static process and dynamic process, and this will vary with genre, right? Like it would be very tough to like improvise and produce an orchestra on the spot, right? Like that orchestration comes from like orchestra where you've written all the parts and all the players are playing it, it's all planned. um Versus something that's like in the moment, you're jamming or you're coming up with stuff, you're
Yeah,
improvising the jazz stuff, or like hip hop, like you're in the heat of the moment, you're finding a vibe and whatever comes out in the moment. And it's funny because when studio started, it was all it was capturing live performances, right? Like
Right. You didn't have 100 takes. It's
exactly, you
like,
couldn't really overdub until later on, and you had to be like top tier, know your stuff. And there's a whole other side of, okay, maybe they've practiced a ton and all that stuff, but in the studio,
mhm.
it was like you set it up, you have your master EQ, the guy's mixing live, you're mixing the channels
Yeah.
live to try and that's going to tape, and that's it, right? And now it's like people are almost going back there after this technology boom, and then it's like, well, let's make this more like organic, and that's what I've been drawn to a lot more, and it sounds like you as well. It's like having something more dynamic
Hmm.
where it's, you're feeling it and you're getting
Yeah.
closer to like the end product in the creation of it.
I like what you said. It's like a cycle. It's like it's almost two sides of the same coin. You're kind of, yeah, you're leaning on one side more at one point, but I don't know. You're doing this, you're doing both at once, whether you realize it or not. Like capturing and composing, I guess, being the two things.
Yeah, it's like different forms of thinking, like idea generation and then like refining at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Which is something else. And that's where like having a machine or something, like if you're just in your studio and playing around with like tools and you're just by yourself, you're going to need like a looper or a machine to help you, depending on what kind of music you're making. But that would be like at this, like you're creating something for it to then become static while creating something else on top of it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to me.
Hmm. I like that. It brings up another idea. I don't know if it's related or not to some extent, but I don't know. I think we kind of mentioned this earlier, but the idea of like hyper perfection and trying to get the end product perfect. I just think of yeah, it's like we're kind of speaking in the electronic kind of genre, but back in the day, it's like you would write the song. The song was more so the launching point for the live performance, which was kind of the real thing in a way. Anyways, I don't know. It's just a side tangent.
Oh yeah, that's, I think that's so relevant for anyone who's been struggling finishing music or lost in hyper perfectionism, wanting to get everything to sound great. And don't be wrong, like wanting to do something of quality and share something at to the best level you can. I appreciate that, but something that I always talk about is like this thing called the hierarchy of quality, and it's this kind of gradient of different things within music and their order of importance. And to me, like songwriting is always and always will be number one. And a great example of this is
Mhm.
like in today's day and age, how much stuff do you hear that sounds great? Like it sounds perfect. It's on
Disturbingly great.
disturbingly great. Like it's like all the frequencies are balanced and it's powerful and it's just like full spectrum, but it doesn't do anything for you.
It's like
Like it
a
doesn't.
hall of mannequins. It's like a hall of mannequins. You're supposed to be attracted to them.
Right.
It's
And,
like, no.
and it's like versus how many songs have stood the test of time that still are legendary songs today that might not have perfect production, right?
Yeah.
That goes to show that it's just like you can't lean into, and obviously this always with a caveat, it always depends on what kind of music you're making, but still like if you're always leaning on processing and editing and that kind of stuff, it's going to
Hmm.
always fall short of having great songwriting and great performance, right? Because
Right.
that's what almost everyone connects to with more. And don't be wrong, there's still like genres of music where like editing and orchestration is great, but there's still excellent songwriting and performance
Yeah.
within that for the
I
great.
feel like we're kind of at a weird stage now though, where like everyone's kind of reached the maximum potential as far as producing goes, and like you're saying, the next whatever obstacle is the songwriting. We're kind of at the point now. I feel personally where I find a lot of the songwriting is starting to get that staleness. Like it's all kind of the same. I guess it's all becoming more generic. Whereas like it was kind of the sound was more generic. Now it's the formula is becoming more generic. I don't know. So I would almost push songwriting even further, and like I don't know how you could kind of like repotentify songwriting, but I guess maybe like a genuine song, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a whole can of worms we can open there. It's like we've always been I guess more artists to embrace like the artistic side of things and like breaking the
For sure,
boundaries,
yeah.
pushing and exploring different ideas and vibes. And like we really resonate with that. And don't be wrong, I
Hmm.
enjoy simple stuff and formulaic stuff as well. However, I like as I've grown older, I'm starting to realize there's a big difference within the production community and the focus between art and craft, because
Yeah.
some people like really learn the craft of like I'm going to produce house music and learn
Hmm.
exactly the formulas and the go-tos and really shape that, and then it's like there's a lot of other things baked into that because of the labels and people who finance that and the fan base and like who pushes that, and they
Hmm.
expect a certain kind of sound to be able to like finance you or work with you.
Yeah.
um and it's certain right, like if
It's
you
like another demographic. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like
I was gonna say it's like, or sorry, go ahead.
oh, go.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's almost like another demographic. Like there's the people, like my mind goes to art. It's like, yeah, there's people that are trying to do fine art, like trying to become a photographer, a camera, or they're just completely recreating what they're seeing. And yeah, it's extremely impressive. Most people can appreciate it the same way most people can appreciate like a really well produced house track or whatever it is. And then there's like the other demographic that we're probably more into, that are kind of more seeking kind of the double take experience, like wait, what was that, like whether it's good or bad really initially, like there's always something to be appreciated, and whatever makes you kind of look at it twice, usually there's like a beauty behind the initial like maybe confusion.
Yeah, make it more unique anyway and like something different.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like those are maybe extremes, like I don't know, something like Dillinger Escape Plan versus Dead Mouse,
Hmm.
right? Like maybe those
Yeah.
are very extremes of what that would look like, but within both of those things, there's a certain amount of craft. Like it's almost like you can't separate, like you have to know how to do something to create something, and it's like the like degree of that can vary, right? So like some people are like theory masters and they know all their harmonies and jazz and super theory, right? So they're very craft
Hmm.
focused. And some people just know of a few things and they get by, right? And that's fine. And you're less focused on
Yeah.
craft, but you still need it at a certain amount. And I feel like the big separation there is that to be an artist and to create something unique and something different kind of has the backdrop of uncertainty, right? Like and some people love
Yeah.
uncertainty, some people love the chaos, and some people are very scared of uncertainty, so they lean towards
It has
certainty.
some, yeah, it has some emotion behind it. It's almost like the art or the product is a result of trying to work something out internally, as opposed to like just like, I don't know, creating something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's I find it interesting because I catch myself sometimes like almost subconsciously that if I'm doing something, and this can be beyond music as well, but if I find that I'm doing something and I feel uncertain about how I'm going to do it. So if you're learning something new, if you're trying a different strategy, if you're creating something that you really don't know where it's going or what it is, that if you there's a subconscious fear, I'll lean into doing something familiar, right? I'll lean into doing or
Hmm.
learning from somebody else's process so I can have a step by step thing. And it's like where's the line between that as a learning tool and to help you, and then the other side it being a handicap and holding you back.
Right. Yeah. I have to ponder on that one. I
Ponders.
definitely, yeah, like I definitely, I often do feel like my 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 preferences, or like my more far out there kind of, yeah, goals are like definitely feel more of a hindrance in the short term, but maybe in the long term, it's like you have more to work forward to, or there's more excitement behind it. I don't know.
Mhm. So you mentioned you're getting into iOS stuff. I know that you have a pretty powerful iPad there. I'd love to chat a little bit more about that if you're down.
Yeah, yeah, it's been an ongoing process. I've been kind of on my MacBook for a while now. Machine was kind of my main tool. Other than also like Logic and Ableton, but made a lot of beats on machines, sampling records and stuff. Still do a little bit of that, but these days, like I was saying, kind of been exploring the app side of things, a lot of like synthesis and sound design, and just kind of reconceptualizing the wiring side of things. Like it's kind of, yeah, the routing, I guess would be the better word, like how to really get creative with routing, and almost like we were chatting about earlier, have like a blank canvas that's very conducive to having like finishing with something quality, as opposed to kind of setting it all up. But yeah, the couple apps that, like, I don't know if it's anyone listening who happens to be into this stuff. Couple big apps that kind of like really made me take it seriously. The first one is called Koala. It's basically, it's like a 404 clone, I would say. So it's like a really well designed, kind of simple at its core, but really like conducive to really good kind of a kind of a specific workflow. Anyway, it's like a sampler, a really awesome sampler. And then there's this other app called Ohm, AUM. It's people might be familiar with kind of MainStage. It's kind of like Apple's Garage Band's brother, meant for like live performance. It's kind of a stripped down DAW with more like very visually kind of all there, like channel strips. Anyways, that's like kind of a nice, that would kind of be my DAW, I guess. There's no timeline in there, though, is the thing. So it's all kind of it's like your mixer is basically hosting your apps and your effects. And then this new app that I just got this week, like a few days ago, that's kind of been like making me lose sleep just over like thinking and like, oh my god, how am I gonna like fully use this beast? It's called Drambo. I think it's been around for a while. It's just got like a crazy new update. It's basically Drambo 2, like fully updated. But that's kind of more like this super, like these other two apps I mentioned are super well, like incredibly well thought out, like very awesome interface. This Drambo app though is like another level. I can't even. It's almost intimidating, but it's all very user friendly. Anyways, it's more like a module, like an automatic modular DAW synth. It does anything you can imagine, I guess. It kind of reminds me of Ableton in a way.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So anyways, I'm kind of synergizing those three apps on top of other awesome like synths and stuff. And the nice thing with iOS is it's a lot more affordable, to the point where like I can actually buy my DAWs. Like my full disclosure, like I've always had to like pirate stuff, I don't know, for a while now, but now it's like, oh man, I've been kind of investing a bit on these apps, and it's actually like I can actually afford things. I don't have to like pay $1,000 to freaking like make a song. So there's a bit of like, oh, I can actually like finish songs here and whatever, release them and not feel like guilty about it. But just for reference, it's like I feel like for like $200, $100 even, you will have like the most souped up studio you can imagine. The thing is, it's all in apps. Like it's not, you have to kind of like dig through your device. But yeah, like seriously, there's like the most expensive apps on there are the pro what are they called, the Fab filter lines. Like
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you're familiar with the
plugin.
Pro Q filters. They're all on there, and those are like $100 for like the whole suite of apps. But
Holy,
that's the most expensive thing I've ever seen.
guys. For sure.
Yeah, and it's the same app. But yeah, most synths are like $3, $4, $5, $10. Anyways, I've probably spent like 100, $200 on top of the iPad, obviously. But yeah, man, it's like it's a different world. It's a new world. I remember being so excited back in the day, like opening whatever GarageBand or just like just the most simple DAWs back in the day, like having your mind blown. Like I have a studio in my room. Now it's like I have a fucking like every synth made, every fucking and whatever. I have everything, not only like in my room or my studio, but like in my hands, device, portable. Anyways, yeah. And then there's this thing which is kind of what brings it all together. It's Korg Nano Key Studio. It's just a Bluetooth stereo or a Bluetooth controller, which is awesome. It's wireless, so yeah, it's pretty deep though. You can program different like chat, or what would it be called? Yeah, whatever. Program different scenes for it, so it can do quite a bit, just like on this. Yeah, that's kind of my rant, I guess. Though. Oh, and the one thing I didn't mention is Cubasis. That's kind of Cubasis 3, I think. That would be like the more timeline, typical, vertical stripped DAW that I haven't actually really played with much, but I feel like using those other kind of apps, you could kind of do your more final arranging in Cubasis. So yeah, all that to say, iOS, not only is it very viable, I would go out and like I would venture to say it almost beats like a laptop studio in a lot of ways. Obviously, like it's hard to beat the power of Ableton, but like you line the pros and con list, it's give it a thought. Like I never thought I'd be like preaching, like, making like full on music on apps.
I think it totally depends on what you need out of a studio, and it sounds like with what you're doing, the music you make, it fits well. And that was something I was going to ask, is like, you know, doesn't it get tiring to always be like this on a thing, but you have a MIDI control? Which
as far as pros and cons, that's definitely a con. Is to like, as if I'm not on my fucking screen enough. It's like, okay, now take time off my screen to go on my screen. So anyways, yeah, pros and cons with everything.
Real quick, like what was the catalyst for you to switch from like Machine to that? Because Machine is a pretty portable thing with a laptop, I guess, and pretty like you were quite proficient with it and still are. But what kind of made you curious and start to try stuff?
Yeah. So again, going back to the music and art thing, the iPad purchase was definitely done on the art side of things, just the iPad Pro and the pencil. So I definitely bought it as a investment in, I guess, design and art, whatever. It's I could go on a whole other rant about like Procreate and all these drawing apps and how everyone, if you draw, you need to like learn how to draw on a screen. Like it's I don't know, it's another revolution. But yeah, so I got it with like art in mind and stuff. And I guess another part of my decision is my old laptop that like is slow. It's like a 2008 MacBook Pro that it's definitely served me well over the years, but lately it's been starting to like crash and just be slower. So man, honestly, last few times I've like tried to have fun with Machine, my like laptop will crash like an hour in because I'm too dumb to save. So it becomes discouraging. And then so it's like kind of everything aligned in the wrong ways to be like, dude, just like look a little deeper into these apps you bought. And like,
very cool. Yeah, that's it seems very fascinating. And like I've heard people produce whole albums on like an iPhone, right? Like it's the technology like it's unreal.
And then something I haven't really dove into, but I'm hoping to sooner than later, is you can like sync iPads together, so you can literally have two different devices with their own processing power contributing to the same project. So I have an iPad on standby that I'll probably kind of add to the hub, to the spaceship. I'm curious how well that's gonna like, or how, because I know a lot of people who like, there's like the whole community now of iOS producers. I know a lot of people do use the two screens, just or more than as many screens as you want, really, because it's so well integrated. Like the famous Beardy Man, he's got like his whatever 5-6 iPads, and he's like the godfather of all this stuff, man. Honestly, like the Tornado and just like really accessible, like craziness. I don't know.
Yeah,
I see him as a godfather.
for sure. He's so forward thinking. Like I think he's still very much like in a universe ahead of ours, and we're maybe getting
Yeah,
closer to what universe
yeah.
is in. That guy's awesome.
Mhm.
So I want to segue a little bit, and I'd love to know more. I know some of it, but it's a good chance to actually dig deeper into this. I'd love to hear a story. If you could tell me a story about how you got into making music.
Music.
How did it
Yeah.
start?
Yeah, I have to go far back for that one. Definitely like a lot of people, I started on guitar. I mean, I shouldn't say a lot of people. I started on a real instrument. I still play a lot of the real instruments, as much as I love computer stuff. But so I played guitar. I think I was 12 when I first started taking lessons. My parents were both pretty musical. My dad a little more so. He's still in bands, actually. He's still playing in bands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's playing bass. Him and I are both playing bass in like a heavy metal band, basically. So it's kind of cool. Yeah, so guitar for a long time. Played in quite a few bands back in the day. I was definitely like a diehard metalhead, like to an extreme, I would say. Or like I look back now and it's like a little not cringy, but it makes me laugh. Like if it's not metal, it's not music or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think here. I think first band would have been, well, I don't know, jammed with a bunch of people, little side projects, but first like official band would have been my own project, I guess, called Head Speaks Truth. We were a 3-piece. We played quite a bit. We were definitely kind of whatever, progressive, like tried to be really like make our own sound. And sadly we never got any like actual recordings done. We tried a bunch of times, and it's the perfection syndrome kicked in, I think, for me at least. I'm sad about it, but it's also like I don't know, it's kind of like a cool thing that just gets to live in the ether. I guess. Another band, you might have heard of them, this band called Bloodline. They were all right.
Right, we were in a band together.
They had some all right songs. They had some all right songs, yeah. Yes, Alex Zan's band, actually, which I was lucky enough to play bass in. I think we were, I think I was 17, 18, kind of out of high school. And we played quite a few shows as well. We definitely had some good times. We definitely had a really cool sound that I still really liked. Yeah, it's like I'm going back into memory lane. I don't know how memory lane to get here, but
Totally.
yeah. So Bloodline, and then I guess those are the two big ones. There's other like kind of side projects that didn't really go much places, but and then these days, so I kind of like put all that kind of whatever live music aside for a while, and just a few months ago actually started jamming with these guys that come over and jam. So we've been playing once or twice a week and kind of getting back into it. It's pretty interesting, like the muscle memory side of things, that you can not play for years or whatever, and it's like I still got it, or it's still somewhere, whatever. Kind of losing track of my timeline here though. But when did I start making like electronic music, or when did I grow out of metal, I guess would be the question.
Yeah, when did that transition happen?
I think I was dealing with a lot. Obviously I was dealing with a lot of like emotions and stuff, hence the metal diehard lifestyle. And just had more like had a lot of expansive experiences on whatever mushrooms and other things like that that really kind of allowed me to, I guess, change my paradigm or kind of expand my horizons a bit, and realize that like I actually really love like all kinds of music, like and that I was kind of being really silly with like the metal thing. So yeah, from there I just kind of like started dipping my feet into more of everything. At that point, I like could have probably named you every metal band, and like I was like obsessive with like learning all the obscure bands and stuff, but I probably knew none, like I knew nothing mainstream, for like probably never heard of Radiohead or whatever, like Gorillaz. So slowly started dipping into the obvious stuff, and then from there I kind of got the same obsessive searching attitude, or like, all right, I gotta like discover not only all the good obscure metal, but all the good obscure music. So that's kind of been a lifetime of its own. Yeah, still these days listen to a lot of everything. I guess I've been like, as cringy as it is, I've been kind of getting into jazz, just like more I shouldn't say cringy, but it's like, yeah, more just the roots of like the craziness. It's like the jazz musicians did it all before anyone else in like the 1920s or whatever. It's getting to appreciate that. Yeah, more electronic stuff. And I don't know. I still have a soft spot for like finding the underground obscure stuff that like you feel cool because only you and two other people know about them. So I still spend a lot of time kind of searching for stuff, which is great. Way less than before, but Spotify's great. Get to find a lot of cool stuff that way. Anyways, that's my rant. I forget when I was ranting about writing my history.
Even yeah, like for the whole time I've known you, you've always been like a node, like a source of awesome recommendations.
Yeah,
Like some of my
a lot of people have told me that.
yeah, like some of my
I've definitely
records have showed me for sure.
Yeah. Oh, it's like, yeah, it makes my heart very soft hearing that. I know I've turned a lot of people onto stuff that they never thought they would have ever like listened to. Like obviously the metal stuff. Like I have a lot of friends in high school that would have never even listened to it. But I'm like, I know your personality well enough to know that you would dig Gojira or whatever, whatever it is. Like I don't know. So yeah, it's funny to think back of it. I was definitely a lot of people's nodes. It comes with the obsessive territory.
Totally. And it's like it's a really cool relationship to have, where you can know somebody because you know so much music that you can recommend what someone would like based upon what you know about them, right? And that's really cool.
Yeah.
To be like that person to
Yeah.
like, have you seen this though? And then just blow my
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm always seeking, is to have my mind blown, and it usually comes from like just the totally like out of left field. I don't know. I like to share the bounty.
Totally. So you grew up around instruments. Your dad played an instrument. You played in bands. We played in a band, which I almost completely forgot about until you brought it out, which is
That's hilarious.
like, oh yeah. Great. But I remember
that was a chapter.
Yeah, because I remember that you got into like machine and hip hop, making hip hop and beats before I did, and you actually like influenced me to get into Ableton and Push, and like you definitely did that. Like look at what's happening now. Like holy shit, that's a big thing.
Yeah,
so,
no kidding.
Like
yeah.
I'm curious about how when did that happen? Because I know you went to school for like media, and you've always been like an artist in drawing and visual artists as well, but you went there and you learned recording or intro to recording stuff. And then when did that change into like production? Like was it the machine, and like was it watch, was it certain kinds of music
Uh,
or seeing someone else do it, or can you remember like what?
so yeah, thinking back a little bit, I think I can't remember exactly how old I would have been. Probably like 19, 20-ish. Um, yeah, I'm trying to remember the details. I just yeah, I started on Logic basically, like just making quick tracks on Logic. I've always kind of like not spoiled myself, but I've always kind of like bought the gear I needed at the time. So I had like a super minimal whatever keyboard, MIDI set up and decent monitors and stuff. So you can do quite a bit with just like whatever, a little bit. Um, yeah, and just like really, I honestly I can't even put my finger on like the moment, like the day I made my first beats or whatever. Um, it definitely was like a super gradual thing that quickly turned into like an everyday gotta make a beat thing. Um, but that didn't last too long. Like it was like a phase. But yeah, just my cousin and I would like come over and we'd be like as cringy as you could be, but like at the time it was the best. Just like whatever, rapping and freestyling. He was like way better at freestyling than me back then, and I was kind of just like showed him the beats I had made that week, and there was moments, like there's definitely moments, but like looking back, it's like okay, we got to start somewhere. Like this is where I was starting, I guess. Um, but honestly, like a lot of the beats are definitely not bad. It was just more like the kind of the like you could tell we're just like stone, not really knowing what we're doing. Yeah, so I guess I started on Logic, and I think I kind of like stuck to that for probably a year, maybe even longer, a year, 2 years. And the more I got into it, the more I kind of like doing my looking around, seeing what people are doing. And I think Machine MK2 had come out just then. So there was like a bunch of hype online. And I kind of knew I was into sampling. Um, yeah, that's kind of like that was kind of my gateway into all this is just, I think it was Rhythm Roulette on YouTube. The series where they just sample records and make beats out of records. And like, damn, that was too fun. So I started doing that. So I've always been sample based more so than I guess sound design or synth based or whatever. So it kind of seemed like the Machine was the perfect tool, and sure enough, it was, and got super, super kind of muscle memoried with it. Made a lot of awesome stuff on it. Never like it was always more of a. I've always had the attitude of like I'm learning to get better, I guess. So it's like I always felt like I was in the early stages, and like I'm doing this for the song that I'm gonna write in 5 years type of thing. So I never really like finished too many things. There was always like a make 3 beats and walk away and make 3 beats the next day, and like which turns into a hell of a headache. But luckily enough, you do get better, and then you can look at all these 100, 200 beats folders and more like 1,000 beat folders and be like, okay, it's good for what it was then, but I know I can make better stuff now. So it's like maybe let's not stress about finishing 1,000 songs, and let's stick to the original vision of just getting better to make that product 10 years from now or whatever it might be. So I still kind of have that attitude, but I don't know. I also start to see it as a kind of an obstacle, or like this obstacle I put on myself. Like, don't bother finishing what you're doing because you'll make better stuff in the future. Whereas I feel I'm kind of at the point now where I am happy with stuff I'm coming out with, and I could probably finalize a lot of stuff and still have the attitude that it'll be better in the future, but at least be able to look back on stuff I released or put out there as opposed to kind of hide, I guess.
Totally. Yeah. And there's a couple things there, like the process of practicing, like creating stuff like crazy is like one of the best ways to get better faster. And like as you progress as like a producer, you start to be able to train your ear to hear things that you might have not heard before. So like, for example, something you made 2 years ago, you might be like, but then if you look at it now, you might hear things that you never heard or know what to do with it because your ear has grown.
Yeah.
And
100%, man. It's
no, yeah. And like the only other thing I was going to mention is like the idea of practicing now to get better for something in the future, right? And like that idea is totally understandable when you're starting out and stuff if you're not feel comfortable, but it's a dangerous thought
Mhm.
because that thought will always be true, right? There's never a
Yeah.
time when that won't be the case where it's like, yeah, something in the future could be better. So you know,
Yeah.
and it's all comes to choice, but yeah, it's something to look at because there's a lot of people that the perfectionism, right? And the judgment on themselves. And obviously we want to do the best job we can. And like if you're not feeling like finishing something or releasing it, but again, like perfectionism and calling something done and the judgment of quality of something is only one perspective, right? Because something that you think is like
Yeah.
might blow someone else's mind away. You can't really know those things.
Yeah, totally. Even like I'll listen to some whatever random songs on Spotify or whatever, and like just listen to it for what it really is. And kind of like we were saying earlier, it's like a lot of like the stuff that stands out to me is not necessarily the stuff that's hyper polished. It's the stuff that's like, man, this guy was ballsy enough to release this in the state that it is, knowing that the state that it is what it is. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know. Yeah, it's I don't know. I found I'm not I don't like to think I'm a perfectionist. I'm definitely like on the spectrum of perfectionist. I'm more of a I guess I'm more like concerned about the journey than the destination, I guess, if I had to like label it in some way. I'm more interested in like the fun I'm having creating something new as opposed to the 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 reward the fun you get from finishing something of but but I've never really kind of dove in too deep into uh yeah, like finishing something and putting it out there and like getting a bunch of feedback in return and kind of getting motivated off that. I've always kind of just been motivated off my own kind of hermetic practice of like just having fun in the moment, which yeah, it's
100%.
great, but it's also it's like yeah, it's like these stages. I just I constantly feel like I'm like on a different stage and it's like it's very small steps, but it's not like these huge steps that I used to kind of think it would be. But it's very incremental um alchemy.
So speaking
Yeah.
of that, I have another question. Um, Describe to me some of your creative process. So you mentioned alchemy. You mentioned that, which is huge. I'm so into that as well. But yeah, just even in general,
Yes.
you can go as deep or as shallow as you want. Shallow or as surface. You know what I mean.
I make heat.
I make sounds.
um,
That's my process.
yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to go deep. I'm trying to like, all right, how do I go deep? I'm trying. I don't know. I guess I definitely used to have a way more of a what's the word here of a not the right word, but like a savior complex or like thinking you're gonna fucking change the world through your art or whatever. Like I used to kind of approach things that way, not like to an insane amount, but there was definitely like a part of that as far as like I guess lyricism would go. It's like that was usually like the topic I would approach, not like to word this carefully, not like um yeah, not like preachy stuff, but just like really like I guess yeah. I've always kind of been interested in metaphysical stuff and stuff. Kind of losing my train of thought here. What are we talking about?
Well, just yeah, it's like your process and like the will to want to share something sounds like meaningful, deep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm having a hard time putting the words together. I guess it's like yeah, lately it's become more of a personal thing, I guess, where it used to be more of a uh from making this music, things around me are gonna change. Now it's become more from doing this music, I'm gonna change, I guess, if I had to like condense it. Um so there's definitely more of a like not a personal, like a vulnerable side coming out or a personal side coming out, a more yeah, like going back to alchemy, it's I've definitely internalized a lot of things where they used to be externalized as far as like what you're trying to change in alchemy. um yeah, I don't know, man, I'm having a hard time with this question. It's too deep for me.
It's all good. Like I resonate a lot with that as well. Like when I started, it was all about like rock star, you know what I mean? Like let's do this,
Yeah,
let's build a career, and
yeah.
like almost wanting to get out there and affect people and influence people. And don't get me wrong, like that desire is still there, but as I've grown, I've kind of shifted more towards like the kind of hermetic thing, like it's like you're shaping and refining part of yourself to shape and refine part of
Hmm.
yourself, right, in your art.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the first kind of goal that I have with what I do. And like if we get a little deeper, it's like the world out there and the world inside of you are the same thing, because there's no other world you can
Hmm.
know other than the world that you experience, right? And
Yeah.
that perspective, it really puts things in a different lens where it becomes more like a sacred art for yourself as opposed to a product to
Hmm.
be sold or something of that nature.
Hmm. Not that the sacred art can't become a product. It's
Yeah,
more
but there's a
the
lot of products
intention
that have
behind it.
no sacredness behind them, and you can tell.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. I do like some of like my favorite products out there though is like the things that were created without really the intention of being massively distributed. I don't know. There's something to be said about like finding the undiscovered thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's also like you can't know what somebody else's process has meant to them as well, right? That's another question mark.
Hmm.
How about on
Hmm.
the more of the what with your iPad now? Like, what would be your process that you approach, like creating new ideas or working on the stuff with your new apps?
Yeah. So like I was kind of saying, I was definitely super sample based for a long time, like collecting records and stuff and digging for samples, which is like a whole little world of its own. Still do a good amount of that. It's a little less kind of instant getting audio into the iPad. I mean, it's pretty easy. You just need a hub and stuff, but it's I haven't really sampled much kind of yeah vinyl into my iPad yet. I've more so been sampling internet stuff, so just sampling kind of stuff off YouTube or whatever. And then another newer thing that I never really, or I used to do kind of right in the beginning when I was starting to make beats and stuff, is starting songs with whatever synths, or not necessarily relying on a sample to start. Kind of like creating a yeah, start creating the vibe without on your own, and then I'm still obsessed with samples. And then I'll usually like drop in the sample on top of that. But it's you get a very different product, like starting from uh, your own drone as opposed to sourcing it out. But yeah,
Nice. Yeah, like I've actually been getting into samples a little bit more now.
nice.
Yeah, because before I'd be always like set up MIDI tracks with a sound on the MIDI track and then play a part in, like very traditional, I guess,
Hmm.
like playing a keyboard and playing parts and arranging stuff. But now I'm going more
Yeah.
towards like selecting sounds and vibes. So I'll still use like a MIDI track and have a cool sound,
Hmm.
but I'll record something to audio without much attention to like the part, and then I'll just resample that and then mess around with it in a
Oh, nice,
and then with the push
nice.
too, um I've just been kind of obsessed with like creating a palette of different sounds. So it's like sourcing whether it's like
Hmm.
from guitar or like found sound like shaker or sample or a MIDI instrument, and then just like getting all these sounds that you're warping and putting together on a palette, and then just have triggers for them instead of playing everything in, which I just
Nice.
just so much more it's a lot more fun. It's a lot
Yeah,
less heady. You can just really just have fun just triggering samples, and it's like song ideas come together really quick. So that's kind of what I'm focused on for these next batch of songs that I'm going to be doing.
cool. Yeah, I haven't really dove in too deep into like resampling, like whatever, having a like what resampling. We all know what resampling is, right? um, but yeah, it's something I'd like to get into. Like, kind of my workflow right now is I have a lot of I have like effects buses or whatever. So typically I'll have my song ready in kind of a dry, unaffected format, and then uh, branching it out into different effect buses. But then from there, it's kind of being all routed into a master bus, I guess. So basically, I've been wanting to resample some of the affected tracks and kind of like throw them back in the chain, which shouldn't be hard to do. It's just something I haven't really messed with much, resampling.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
crazy world. Sampling is it's a whole other world to get into. Um,
yeah.
I got another deep question for you, which we'll see what happens. So,
Shoot.
what does art mean for you? And you can take
Oh,
whatever
God.
context you want.
Yeah. Uh, what is art to me? Yeah, curious. I want to hear my own answer. I'm like, what is he gonna say?
Like, waiting to see what the answer would be.
Yeah, it'd be good to know, I guess. Eh? I don't know. I think it's just like a positive way to spend time. There's so many negative ways to spend time. Why not get obsessed with the positive way to spend time? You know, I try not to go too deep with it. I definitely used to, and it's not the greatest like mental health wise. Being like, I don't know, thinking too grandiose about it, like the frequency of arts being the anchor of the federal. Anyways, I don't know. These days, it's more of an innocent hobby, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Like,
Yeah,
I'm down with that. It's just something beautiful that we can be part of. That that
yeah.
it's self fulfilling, right?
Maybe it's like a way to keep time too. I find that like I'll use art or like a piece of art or like a piece of music to kind of reference periods of time in my life. It's I don't know. Obviously, time is not as linear as we like to think it is, and it's nice being able to kind of revisit a chapter, or kind of look at the whole timeline just from like holding a piece of art or listening to a song and being some kind of something's going on in the brain. There's something to it. It's like
Yeah,
a tangible totem for the infinite moment.
that's for sure. That's it's crazy if you think about that, like in terms of all art that we have seen from all different periods of time of human history. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely a totem. But even if you go into like different phases of time, there's definitely some threads of
Yeah,
commonality, which is also interesting.
yeah. Thing with art, it's like or music or creativity, like you have to be in the moment to do it. It's, not everything works that way. It's like there's a lot of things we do every day where you from the outside it's looks like you're being productive, but you're kind of uh whatever, like following yourself type of thing. It's like you're kind of doing art or music. For me at least, it's like, okay, that's the time where I'm like super dialed into the moment that always is. And yeah, it's interesting sometimes when you catch yourself like driving or just doing work or whatever. It's like you're not really in the moment, are you? Or
Right.
like you look, I don't know, not like you think you are.
Yeah, it's a good catalyst to, especially music, because it lives in the moment, right? It's the only
Yeah,
it lives, which is so interesting. But yeah, it's a great
Yeah,
grounding mechanism to bring you back there and get off that
no
autopilot.
doubt. Yeah.
um,
Oh, there's balance to it though. So I feel like lately, if anything, I could use more less moments like in the moment. I don't know. There's nothing wrong with kind of like being in the being swept away by the day, I guess. It's good sometimes.
totally. Um, Here's another question for you, another couple. What
Mm-hmm.
were some of your biggest struggles in your journey? And we could keep it to art or creativity or just in general. It's up to you. But what are some of the bigger problems that you have faced? In-
Yeah, good question. Um, I don't have an obvious answer that comes to mind other than depression, Great Depression. I don't know how much I would like. Obviously, they're very closely related, but uh, they're also not. Um, yeah, I guess I would say one of my biggest struggles was dealing with like depression early in my more established creative identity, and who knows if it how much of it is correlated. I like to think maybe it is very correlated when you kind of take on this new role which you haven't fully uh, integrated yet. It's like maybe that's kind of where the depression comes in, or it's like this period of readjustment or like readjusting or yeah, finding your balance. So I definitely felt like I had a kind of whatever 18 19 years old. I definitely had like a phase of being like getting all these downloads, being like, okay, this is who I'm gonna be, this is what I'm gonna do, these are the gifts I have, and this is the timeline I see or whatever. And then so you have that moment, and then the next moment comes and you're like, you're still your old self with all these new ideas. And it's like the slow process of integrating, like kind of bridging the gap. So that was a real thing, but like it got pretty difficult. Like that gap was almost not breached. It almost didn't happen. There were moments, yeah, not to get gruesome, but man, it, like the lows keep getting lower, type of thing. Um, Thankfully, now though, it's like on the other side of it. It's like, holy shit, is it ever like a priceless, like it's to your advantage, man. You can't even put a put a price on it. Like how valuable going through that is, like for your own sake and for being able to share it. I don't,
100%.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, 100%. I feel like I've gone through that as well. A lot of heavy-headedness and
Yeah,
tension, and I feel a lot of people, especially in that age range, when you're 17, 18, 19, where there's the tension between like who you are, what you think you should be, and like what you are actually pulled towards doing, like your intuition, and figuring all
yeah,
that out, because we are not guided to figure that out, right? It's like almost the opposite,
yeah.
like the craft thing.
It's
We're like
funny. It's
formula. It's like this is
yeah.
the it's like, oh, does it fit for everyone?
It's almost like taking the initiative to guide yourself, like realizing you've been guided your whole life through whatever society or whatever. And it's like when you have the opportunity to kind of see it all for what it is and being like okay, now I'm like choosing to guide yourself and like the implications behind that, we're kind of starting from scratch or kind of it's a big crossroads.
So on the flip
Yeah,
side of that, like you said, and I agree with you that like going through it, like facing that tension and that like depression and like not running away from it, because I feel a lot of people
yeah,
that because it is scary and it's a lot. But going through it becomes like the seeds for what you will eventually grow into. And the other
yeah,
question I have is like, what are some of your biggest breakthroughs? And it could be related to that, right?
Yeah. So I just wanted to say, I definitely feel like, uh, I from my conversations and from what I gather, I guess I feel like the way I went through depression was a little different than a lot of or most people. Like you were kind of saying, as far as like the norm is to kind of avoid the lows, uh, when you're in that state, is to like when you feel like, okay, there's like a heavy dip here, the instinct is to counter the dip and trying to bring yourself up or whatever. I've always been like, okay, if we're going low, if we're going down, might as well like go down full for like go down full force or see the the how deep the depths go, I guess. So that that came with like a lot of interesting outcomes that I probably like put more on myself than I needed to, but got more out of the experience than I would have. Yeah, it's vulnerable to talk about. It's almost like realizing there's a silver lining to the depression. There's a part of you that's getting something from the depression, and obviously you don't want to be feeling like that, but at the same time you realize there's wisdom being uncovered. So kind of that fine line of like being functional in the world, but yeah, I don't know. Anyways, all that to say, like I definitely uh went deep, like went to the depths of hell when I was in that in those times, and learned a lot from it. I feel like a lot of like, because I only have so many like traumas and demons and whatever, but I feel like I definitely tapped into a collective suffering, a collective pain, which I don't know, man. I'm losing my train of thought. I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't know. That collective pain was kind of like made me realize, yeah, the lows literally always get low. Like thinking you're gonna eventually hit this like bedrock that you can't go past. It's like, man, I've went deeper than I've already been meant to go. It's like this is time to like, okay, enough's enough. I kind of like there was definitely a period of like realizing what I was doing to myself when I was like gaslighting my own depression to like be just a little more enlightened on the other side of it or whatever. Yeah. all that to say, I don't know what.
Well, so what like
what was the other part of the question? I feel like I didn't answer your question.
what was the breakthrough? So like what
Right, the
helped
breakthrough.
you, yeah, from there to get to where you are now?
Yeah, kind of like I was saying, like feeling like really realizing that uh yeah, I guess just repeating what I just said, like realizing I was kind of doing a lot of it to myself, realizing that it's up to me to kind of like decide when to come up from the depths or whatever. And I'm pretty sure mushrooms had something to do with it or something like that. Those like those states of opportunity you can get into, or it's you really like you actually have a real opportunity to come out of the experience differently, and often there you can just as well not. But I probably had a pretty powerful experience that made me kind of realize the depression was over. Like, I don't know.
No,
It's all memories of memories at this point, to be honest. Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, and like it's interesting because there's like the two sides of it. Like there's like when you're feeling depressed and if you're trying to be like, "Oh, I'm going to make myself feel better." It's like you're kind of denying yourself because you are feeling the way you're feeling.
Mhm.
And like acceptance is a huge thing with that. But also the other side is like you might be going deeper into it um as doing
Mhm.
that. So like you said, it's a fine line. But speaking of psychedelics, like for me the first like the first time I did mushrooms was the first quote unquote spiritual, or if you want to call it religious, experience
Yeah.
I had, where it's like
Mhm.
you're interacting with part of yourself and your connection to the world that's like you've never experienced anything like it, and it was like it's like a it blows your mind of what is even conceivable or possible before, and like in wake of that,
Yeah.
it opens up doors for change, right? Because a lot of depression and trauma and stuff is like the brain locking on to a specific way
Hmm.
of looking at things and reacting to things, and like those kind of tools, and there's all sorts of tools outside of psychedelics as well, can like open up the doors to be able to see where your thinking was and where it could be possible. And yeah, like sky's
Yeah.
the limit with
Well
that.
put.
Of
Yeah. To approach with caution though, because
course.
like anything,
I
it's
would
like
never recommend it
who needs another crutch?
yeah.
We're in a world of crutches. Who needs another crutch? Yeah, I don't know. Well, like, I don't know. We mentioned mushrooms, and there's obviously acid. There's friendly psychedelics. There's stuff you can do that you won't get addicted to. That won't ruin your life. That will actually completely transform you into the betterment.
Yeah, I'm always an advocate
But
of like of obviously like I almost wouldn't recommend anything to anybody. And it's like more so it's like, hey, if you feel like that's something you need,
yeah,
you want to explore, then here's
yeah,
my experience. But I would never recommend it. And
totally.
what I feel is like all the answers to any problem are inside of you, right? There's no outside
Hmm.
thing. And there's like I almost feel like having friendships, having great connections with people, cool experiences are like ways for you to align with yourself in different ways, in different
Hmm.
reflections. But at the end of the day, it all comes from your own problem solving and your own self-awareness. And
Yeah,
that's what ties into art. It ties into pretty much everything, life as you know it. It's like it's being
yeah,
in that awareness state of yourself and being able to move with the ebb and flows and understand the ebb and flows and have solutions that are healthy for whatever those are, because everyone's going to have different ebb and flows and different things that affect them. And if you can get a handle on that stuff, um just with your own faculties as a human being, it's you're on a right path, right? And like you said, you don't have any crutches, and we live in a society of crutches, right? So art would be a
yeah,
great one that isn't a crutch, right? That would be a great compadre.
yeah. That's all on how you frame it. I'm sure some people could say, "Oh, you're doing art all day as a crutch." You know, it's all perspective.
Mhm. Cool. Well, what I like to do to close these out is I have these slightly cheesy, slightly ripped off from Tim Ferriss rapid fire questions. That if
All
you're down,
right,
we'll go through them. There's some fun ones and close it
let's
off.
do it.
Cool. Okay, so
Yeah,
what
awesome,
would
man. That's
yeah. Um okay, so number one, what would you say, this is gonna be hard for you. What would you say is I'm gonna say artist you've shared most with other people?
ooh, good question. Uh, yeah. I mean, I want to say intronaut, honestly, but there's not too many people I've shared that. But intronaut comes to mind just because I'm like, I still am like such a fanboy.
They're
Um,
so good. Please check Intronaut out if you haven't already.
yeah, for real. I'm trying to think more. Yeah, back in the day, I was like recommending a lot of metal and stuff. I'm trying to think more recently. Death Grips comes to mind, I guess. But like everyone would have found out about Death Grips on their own, one way or another, whether I'm the one who shows it to them or not. But I've definitely turned a few people onto them.
I mean, I guarantee you that there will probably be someone who listens to this who's never heard Death Grips. So please,
Oh my god, what a thought!
please check it out.
Yeah,
Let me know. Let us know what you think in the comments of Death Grips. I'd love.
yes, yes.
um,
Make some tea. Make yourself a cup of tea.
my goodness. Oh god. What are three books that have greatly influenced your life?
Yeah, yeah. Dao Di Ching, shout out always, of course. The I Ching is probably 1, 2, and 3. But yeah, that's actually this book I've just finished, which was like took me so long to read, just of the denseness of it. It's called Dancing the Dream.
Wow.
It's incredible, man. It's the 7 sacred paths of human transformation. This, I guess, kind of Aboriginal philosophy about kind of like relating to what we've been talking about this whole time, of like how you have the awakening experience is like very gradual. Like the initial awakening experience will result in a certain kind of headspace, and obviously looking back like 5 years down the line in that same kind of awakening paradigm, like you look back at who you were on year 1, and it's like extremely cringy and extremely like unresearched and like whatever, very loosey goosey, new agey, all this shit. Yeah, anyways, this book kind of describes like the 7 stages of like how you're able to look back at yourself and like realize like where you are now is like much more evolved, even though where you thought you were then was like you thought it was the pinnacle or whatever. So it's been really helpful for me, man, because I've definitely like fallen into the traps of like where do you go from here? Like I've already like gone the downloads of like the timeless downloads of like feeling like you know everything, and I mean, obviously it's like putting it into practice is a different story, but anyways, a big old rant about Dancing the Dream, amazing book. And number 3, really tough. I've read a lot of books, not too many of them like make an impression. I think one of the latest ones I've read that's pretty cool is what the hell's it called? Becoming Superhuman, Supernatural.
Cool.
It's kind of well known. What's his name? Joe Dispenza. It's like a very scientific approach to expanded states of awareness, I guess. Very like well researched and like kind of super recommended for, I guess, the more skeptical people. And I don't know, you can still be skeptical but aware of like the higher or the more expanded realities, I guess. There's skepticism is not a bad thing.
100%.
Anyways,
I resonate with that a lot, and like I'm not skeptical, but I resonate with scientific explanation of it, like that modality of thought, even though you know the limits of that kind of thought. I do understand that, so that's sick. I'm definitely gonna check those out. Next question: how has failure or apparent failure led to success? Like, do you have a favorite failure? So like something that was like a fail in hindsight was great, or something that looked like it was just not gonna work out and then it somehow miraculously did something great.
Honestly, nothing comes to mind. I think partly due to being very like reserved and hermetic, and not necessarily being very vocal with or upfront with like the stuff that would probably like make me feel like failured about. I think my biggest failure is just like maybe taking it too easy, being a little more serious about it. It's not really a failure though. I'm kind of veering from your question. I don't know, but no, I don't really have a big event that like triggered some kind of, I don't know. So not really, no.
Cool, all good. Best sub $100 purchase you've recently made?
Ooh, I like these questions. I'm trying to looking around here. There's a lot of stuff in this room. Oh, here, this is a good one. A rope.
Oh shit!
Um,
So many uses.
man, no, this is actually, I bought this like last year, like a year ago. It's, I guess, an exercise rope. It's kind of so I've never been the most uh whatever exercisey guy. I stay in shape, or I stay whatever as in shape as I need to be, but I never really train much or focus on that stuff. But just because I often find it's like boring or like doing reps, I don't know.
Mhm.
I need to be entertained. Like I'd probably have a better time doing sports and stuff than like going to the gym. But this rope has been a pretty cool thing. I haven't really used it all winter, but I got pretty obsessed last summer. It's basically, you're basically swinging this rope. I can't really do it in my room, but you're swinging it around you, and it's basically as you're kind of strengthening these like really standard muscles. You're syncing your left and right side. The rope is like a feedback for how smooth you're doing the motion. So it's a very like, it's cool, man. It's like I do juggling sticks and stuff too. It's kind of like that thing where you kind of like get in the pockets, and you actually like break a bit of a sweat, and but not to the point where it's like you have to stop. You could probably keep going forever, but you feel exercise. Anyways, yeah, this rope. It's the way of the rope is the company I got it from, but I think he just literally gets rope and like cuts it to the right length. So you could probably find a nice rope and do it yourself. It was a little bit like 40 or 50 bucks, maybe even more for a rope, but no regrets. Yeah, it's just like a fun way of, it feels like you're doing like yoga and exercise and like whatever, juggling.
Yeah, you get
Yeah.
that coordination in too. That's sick.
Yeah.
What's one of the most worthwhile investments you have made? And this can be money, time, or energy.
Mm. Hmm. My iPad.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably my iPad. Um, yeah, I don't make too many like bigger purchases. Like I try and like find the deal, which I did find the deal on this iPad, but it was like still a bit of a bill. But yeah, I definitely feel like I've gotten my money's worth and then some, and all the years to come. It's Yeah, I feel like I haven't really hit its potential yet. Like it's very, as far as like a tool for business. Like if I were to more finalize more things and kind of when I start to take things more seriously, it's like, oh my god, this iPad will definitely be the brains to the operation.
Sick. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
huge. It's like
alongside my own brains.
yeah. Sometimes you need two brains, though. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
What's some bad advice you hear in your area of expertise? So this could be in like the art
Mm.
world, the music world.
Yeah, yeah. Bad advice. Oof. I wish I had an instant answer. I got to think about that one. Oh, save all your projects. That's the worst. Don't save all your projects. Let them go. Make an amazing song just to not save it. Like seriously, you're gonna end up with like 1,000 files that are just gonna become more of a headache than anything. That's my
Yeah, you'll
advice.
never have the time.
Don't save every project. Honestly, though, for a while I was like completely hindered from production and just music because of like, yeah, just feeling like I couldn't make anything new because I had to go through these 1,000 tracks. And anyways, obviously save the good ones, but be honest, there's like 1 in 10 that are good.
Yeah, curate
Yeah.
right off the bat. Um, what's an unusual habit or absurd thing you love?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Sleeping on the floor.
That
That's
fits the
a good
question.
one, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. Sleeping on a flat surface is definitely a game changer. Highly recommended.
Nice. If you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, what do you usually do?
Well, this thing called marijuana. I like to use marijuana. Yeah, I definitely. It's definitely an ally. I don't get to those places too often, like overwhelmed, but maybe that's because I use my tools. Marijuana. Yeah.
What do you know now that you wish you knew when you started? So let's say maybe the production thing or even the art thing. Take it where you want, but what would be some advice you give your past self?
Uh, it's not better if it's more complicated, maybe. That was definitely a thing for a while, like having a dope vibe, a dope beat, but just like there's not enough, like, I don't know, feeling like you didn't spend enough time on it or something to like to I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. It's not always like a matter of how long you spend on it or like
Oh man, yeah. Without
how
going
much
you
you stress about it.
some of the best songs in the world came together so quick, and like
Yeah.
the correlation between like time spent and hard work does not equal equality in music.
Never does.
This one is a super asshole question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. So prepare yourself.
Shoot.
Top three desert island albums.
Oh, I love it. Shit, I'm not prepared though. Oh, give me a minute here.
I love.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Rapid
I
fire.
don't know, man.
How about just three albums that you love?
I'm
That
trying to, yeah, I'm trying to think of like, you want different genres. You don't want three of the same genres.
or you could use desert island as like a limiting factor. It's like if you're on an island, what albums do you want?
Yeah. Beach Boys.
Beach Boys.
No, I'm not gonna overthink it. I have some obvious ones that like I'd probably regret once I'm there because like, damn, I already listened to this so many times. Why did I bring them along? But You're Dead by the To Pimp a Butterfly, or sorry, well, You're Dead by Flying Lotus comes to mind.
Oh.
I don't know, it's not even that great, but it's like it comes to mind, so I gotta say it. It is, I shouldn't say it's not great. It's because I've listened to it too many times. I kind of said it without meaning to Pimp a Butterfly, but that's another one that it's like, fuck, I've listened to it so much. I could probably listen to it more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Void by Intronaut. That's like my most nostalgic piece of art ever. So probably that. I don't like those answers, but that's what I said.
Either way, I support anyone checking those out. If you haven't heard them, definitely check them out.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. If you could send a text message to everyone on Earth in their language, what would it be?
Mm-hmm. Probably some kind of troll. I'm not clever enough right now. Yeah, I don't know. No, I don't know. Something's like something breath related, like can you breathe deeper? Like take a deeper breath. I don't know. It's corny.
That's cool. No,
Something like that.
breathe, man. I've been
I'm
getting
a big, yeah, yeah,
breath is important. That is for sure. We need it.
yeah. It's number one.
Mhm. Cool. Well, that wraps up all the questions I had, the hilarious rapid fire questions that never end up being rapid fired. And yeah,
Yeah, no kidding.
it's hilarious. Thanks again for taking the time to chat with me. This was super fun. And is there anywhere that people can check out what you're doing or follow you and learn more about what's going on in your world?
Yeah. Not as much as I'd like, but probably sooner than later. I do have an Instagram with a bunch of art, fractal.energy.art. I haven't posted on there in way too long. I'll probably change that soon. I don't know. I've kind of like it's been nice taking a break from Instagram, but I've been wanting to get back in the wild west a bit. Other than that, nothing right now. Yeah, it's kind of silly. I don't really have any music up for online. I really should, but when I do, you guys will be the first to know. My project though, the name I go under, I guess, which I haven't actually released anything, is Castle Goin. So Castle Goin. It's kind of an anagram of my name and stuff. So yeah, when I do release stuff, it'll be under that name, probably on Instagram or whatever. But yeah, follow my art account if you want. Yeah, this is very out of my comfort zone, doing an interview. Probably the first interview I ever did. You look great though. I can't wait to watch this and cringe my ass off.
Awesome. Okay, well, we'll put the links to those pages in the show notes once we get them. And yeah, with that, man, thanks so much for taking the time. And let's close out this episode.
Love you lots, brother.
Love you too, man.